Okay, so here we go. Last session of the conference, I'm gonna, in a second, hand over to EHLERT. Ashley is the Deputy General Secretary and Legal Director of IIHF. And together with a panel of experts, Ashley is going to help us carefully explore a topic that connects directly to my presentation at the beginning of the morning, and that has finally and thankfully become incredibly important in sport, and especially in youth sport. We're talking about integrity. So please welcome Ashley EHLERT, please. Thank you. Ashley, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you for the warm introduction. So today, as you can see from the screen, I'm going to speak with you guys about integrity. So the goal today is not that you will walk away from this brief presentation as integrity experts. The goal is just to raise your awareness. It's to give you the tools to identify issues and know when to seek help. It's to give you the tools, the basic tools to understand the integrity issues and deal with them when they are confronted to you. So the IIHF operates under a 4-pillar integrity program. The 4 pillars are anti-doping, competition manipulation, abuse and harassment, and ethics. Today, I'm going to speak with you about the first 3 pillars, and then we will have a panel session of experts to discuss those pillars with you. So I have a question, starting with anti-doping. Do you think we have a problem in ice hockey? Do you think that we have players that are taking prohibited substances, intentionally doping, maybe recreational drugs? Maybe players are breaking the rules and they don't even know they're breaking the rules. Who thinks that we have a problem with doping in ice hockey?
The thing that I didn't understand is that it is possible to get a doping offense without actually testing positive. I had never done a drug in my life. I had never even taken a puff of a cigarette in my life. I got drug tested 2 weeks before, I got drug tested 2 weeks after. I think during that whole Olympic year, I must have been drug tested at least 7 or 8 times, all negative. You know, the way that I've always been brought up is to obey command. When your senior manager is telling you this is what it is, and essentially do what I say, what choice do you have? Especially when you're trying to make a team. I was trusting my senior managers, and I was trusting the people who were in charge, and even throughout those moments, I did have a little bit of doubt in my mind. I even remember saying, listen, maybe I should just do the test and we should just move on. This person has seemed to provide enough information that it doesn't seem like they're fake. Let's just do the test. I got nothing to hide, let's just do it. And I was pretty quickly silenced on that, saying, no, you're not taking the test. This person is out of line, they've broken the rules. I don't want to say I was shut up, but I mean, it was pretty much laid out to me that either you take this test or that can pretty much kiss your Olympic dream goodbye. And I mean, for me, how many chances would I ever get to be in the Olympics? If you guys are telling me like nothing is going to happen of this, the worst thing I'm going to do is get a warning, and I trust you. And that turned out to be a mistake. And it just destroyed all trust that I had. And even into regular life, if I can help somebody not get into that position, and I can help a person not have to feel the same emotions or the same things that I had to deal with, that helps me heal as well.
Okay, so I can say overall, IHF, ice hockey is a very lucky sport. We don't have a significant amount of doping in ice hockey. However, what we do have is inadvertent doping, players not knowing the rules, and this leads to doping violations. However, we have determined with the phenomenon of ice hockey, there are certain things that can increase doping in our sport, and that is scientific development. The more scientists are out there creating substances that potentially could help ice hockey players, the greater chance that one day we could have a problem in ice hockey. Salary increases. The higher the salary goes up, the more the players want those salaries, the more likely they're going to take something in order to get those high salaries. And the last one is demand in ice hockey. Ice hockey players have grueling schedules. They play back-to-back games. Either they themselves will take a substance to recover faster, or it will be put upon them to take this substance to recover faster. And these are 3 of the reasons that we've identified that while we do not have a significant amount of doping in ice hockey now, it could increase that in ice hockey. Just to give you guys some statistics, it's always interesting. We had 37 positive cases globally in 2018. This includes all ice hockey everywhere in the world except the NHL. 2019, 26 positives. 2020, 15 positives. 2021, 18 positives. 2022, 16 positives. We're hoping this is an indication that we're going in a better direction with respect to positives. However, we do have to say that in the last 3 years, due to COVID, we did have less testing. So really in the next coming years, we'll know the statistics of whether or not there really is a decrease in positives, which we are hoping is a result of increased education, increased awareness. So you guys understand the substances we prominently see in ice hockey. So prominently, a lot of substances abuse, cocaine, marijuana. In 2021, the code changed, so if a player takes cocaine or marijuana outside of competition, rather than getting 2 years, he could have 3 years or 1 year. We are more aligned with the NHL rules with respect to substances of abuse. Stimulants, steroids. Steroids are a very bad substance. They carry a very long sanction for players. Diuretics or masking agents. This is usually seen if a player is trying to flush something out of a system because he's taking something more significant. You have glucocorticoids and EPOs. So these are all of the substances that we saw that were taken by players in 2022 that resulted in positive cases. So I briefly want to touch on, you guys are coaches. So what does anti-doping mean for you? So it's really important for you guys to understand that over the years, with the last 2 versions of the WADA code, WADA has made more responsibility for what's called athlete support personnel, and that is coaches. It essentially means that as a coach, you can get in trouble for a doping violation. So it's very important that you understand what your rules and your responsibility is with respect to anti-doping. And I think the most important thing we always tell coaches is you need to be a role model. You need to stand up and make sure your players understand that taking any type of prohibited substance is wrong. You need to be knowledgeable of and comply with all anti-doping policies. Cooperate with athlete testing programs. Players have to be tested in a registered testing pool. They have to be tested after a game. Coaches hate it when players get pulled out of a locker room. They get pulled out of practice. Unfortunately, this is the code and we have to follow it. You have to make sure that you're cooperating and that the athletes are cooperating. Cooperate with any investigation. If you get approached by the IIHF or NATO, a national anti-doping organization, they're doing an investigation. They have questions for you. You must cooperate. If you do not cooperate, you can be held for an anti-doping violation. Do not possess any prohibited substances or prohibited methods without a valid justification. And really important is if your players come to you and they're taking something, make sure that you understand what a TUE is and how you can help them get a TUE. So those who do not know, a TUE is what's called a therapeutic use exemption. There's no way in your coaching career that you will not have a player that needs to take a medication. We're human, we will all get sick. Some of your players will have a disease. What is important is that you help them understand that that is okay. We want you to take that medication. We want you to be better. But you have to make sure you go through the correct procedure so that you do not get in trouble. And that's a therapeutic use exemption. All it is it's a simple application. You can find this application on the IIHF website. You can find it at from your NATO. You fill it out, the player fills it out, he submits his medical records, he submits the medical information. It is sent to a TU committee, whether or not that's at the IIHF level, if the player is an international athlete, or at the national level, or the NATO, the National Anti-Doping Organization, if the player is a national level athlete. What is really, really important that you guys understand is players have to wait till that TUE is approved. If a player plays without the TUE approved, he could risk that it's not approved and he could get in trouble for an anti-doping violation. So it is a very, very, very high risk to have an athlete play if he has not had the TUE approved yet. So you guys know a prohibited list comes out once a year, comes out in January of every year. This has every single substance on this list that your players are not allowed to take. This is very, very difficult to understand. It's not an easy list. My team works with it every day and it's still hard for us to understand. These are medications that I can't even pronounce. So what is really important is that you guys understand that there are really amazing tools out there that can help you and can help your players. Most of your national anti-doping organizations have these websites. If you don't, you can go to Global DRO, which is a global one, and it's so simple. You get on the website, you put in the medication, and it will come up and it'll tell you if it's prohibited, if it's not prohibited, if it's prohibited in competition, or it's prohibited out of competition. It's very important that you guys know these resources and you can give these resources to your players so they can check. If they come to you and they say, hey, my doctor said it was cool, I can take it, no problem. Ultimately, it's still that player's liability. And a lot of doctors don't understand all of the implications of the WADA code. So tell your players, hey, your doctor said it's okay, go check it again. Here's a website, go check it. Let's be on the safe side. So what should a coach do if you suspect your player is using drugs? Talk to your players. That's the most important thing we can do. We need to talk to our players. Ensure that they understand the rules and that they understand that they cannot take these medications when they're playing, when they're an ice hockey player. Check to see if the violation is deliberate or intentional. As I said, most of the cases we have is the players just didn't know the rules. They said, hey, if I can go in the pharmacy and I can buy it over the counter, who would have thought that I can't take it, that I'd get in trouble for taking it? Make sure they know the rules and get them a TUE. Make sure the players are aware of the sporting values and health. Make sure they understand cheating. You do not allow cheating on your team. Make it clear. I do not allow cheating on my team. I do not tolerate doping on my team. We always really advise our doctors, we advise everyone. If you do not know the answer to the rule, do not answer. I advise every single medical supervisor. I advise every single doctor. No one knows everything. If you are not 100% positive of the answer, do not answer that question. Go get help. Go have your player find someone who can answer that question. Coaches' roles and responsibilities. Never prevent a DCO from taking a sample from a player. Never encourage, advise, or direct a player not to provide a sample to a DCO. Never prevent a chaperone from entering a locker room. Never pull a player from a game or hide a player in an attempt to prevent the player from being tested. And never direct or require a player to take a prohibited substance. What is really important for coaches to understand, ultimately players are liable. Ultimately, a player is going to get a sanction. But as of the 2015 code, WADA is taking action against the athlete support personnel. They are standing up and making them be accountable as well. So moving on, I'll try to stay in time. I'm going to briefly now touch on competition manipulation. So integrity in competition. What makes ice hockey attractive to you? What do you expect when you go watch an ice hockey game? Why do you guys go? Fun, entertaining. It's the potential that even the underdog could win. No one knows the result. It's not predetermined. But this is what competition manipulation is. It removes that uncertainty of the game because it's a group of players or coaches or officials have come together before the game even begins and decide who is going to win. There's two reasons that they do this. It's for monetary reasons. They manipulate a game because they're going to get money or something of benefit in exchange. But also what is very important to remember for coaches and for players is that in accordance with the IIHF rules and most sporting rules, you can also get in trouble if you manipulate a game for sporting reasons. And essentially what this means is if you intentionally lose on purpose to face an easier opponent to get to the final. I can say now that the IIHF has 3 investigations going on for competition manipulation in our championships this year for sporting reasons. So it's also important to understand, why is this potentially increasing? Why are we more concerned about competition manipulation? And that is because there is a significant increase in the amount of betting opportunities going on in ice hockey. Globally, there is over 20 billion turnover per year on the legal markets in ice hockey. This does not include a majority of the illegal markets that you would see in Asia. Just on our championships, so going through a few of these. This is last year's statistics for Finland because obviously we don't know yet for this year. So in 2022 for our championship here in Finland, we had 6.5 million euros bet per game. It's not for the championships, it's per game. All of these statistics are per game in each of these championships. And our juniors, so a junior event, under 20 event, we had approximately 5 million euros bet per game. In our World Women's in Canada, we had 1.5 million bet per game. This is the turnover per game. And what is important to note that this is not in descending order of our championships. It's very much geographically placed. So you would think our lower division championships would have less betting, higher divisions would have more betting. But it depends on where the championships are held. It depends on the level of betting. This kind of gives you a comparison between the different leagues. So as I said, last year at our World Championships, we had 6.5 billion. We anticipate per game this year at this championships, we will have between 6 and 8 million bet per game. Obviously, NHL is the highest with 8.7 million per game, which is a higher turnover because they have more games. CHL is 1.5 million, and other European leagues are roughly 600,000 per game. There's a lot of betting turning over in ice hockey. And as you can also see in the Olympics, ice hockey is the most bet on sport at the Olympics. So I think there's 2 things to think about with this. It's good. Our sport is popular. Our sport is becoming more popular. There's more odds. There's more things being offered on our sport, but it increases the risk. It increases the risk that manipulators want to get into our sport and will want to start manipulating our games for benefit. So you guys understand, we have our competition manipulation code covers 4 aspects. And it is that you cannot bet in ice hockey if you work in ice hockey. And you cannot bet if you are in a multi-sport event. What that means is that a player at the Olympics can not only not bet on ice hockey, he cannot bet on any sport at the Olympics. Obviously, you cannot manipulate a game, whether or not you're a coach or you're a player. You should not share insider information. Insider information is information that a player or a coach knows because they're inside the team. And then it is an obligation in accordance with the rules to always report. So the question again, do you think this happens in ice hockey? Do you think that we have players betting on their own games? Do you think we have players manipulating games?
I managed to put myself in a quite bad position when I was playing in Denmark. I came back to Denmark after playing in US and Canada like kind of professionally and had to go back to Denmark, to my hometown, and kind of restart my career. And at that point during the season, I managed to put a bet on my own team and face the consequences that came along with it. And I got suspended. I had to kind of live in a bit in the unknown for a couple of months because I didn't know what's going on. I had to go to court. I had to kind of face a lot of people and tell them what I did. And when things were going good, it was pretty easy to be a hockey player. Everything is good. Nobody, like, you just go out and play. You But once you get into this negative spiral of emotions and the game that you play on the ice doesn't maybe work out the way you dream of or the way you expect, you maybe put on the bench, or you don't feel you belong on the team, you don't get the sense of belonging wherever you go. Inside of me, something happened, and I didn't know what to do with my emotions. I started to bet on football games. It was hard to watch a football game without betting, because kind of chasing a bit of the rush, because I had the rush playing in some of the best leagues in the world. We had this rush playing in front of 10,000 people. Now you're back, you don't get the same rush, and I was chasing it somewhere else, and I didn't know how to get back on track. And it got worse and worse and worse until, make a bet, not for financial reasons. It was not to win an amount of money. It was not to hurt the team. It was not to manipulate any games in that way. It was more to kind of hurt myself. You kind of wanted to push myself more down and feel sorry for myself. And I didn't kind of know how to snap out of it. The situation in Denmark kind of made me realize a lot of things, but put me in a position where I managed to make a bad decision by betting on my own team.
Okay, well, it's important to remember that the IIHF is fighting against all types of competition manipulation and helping players understand when they can and when they cannot bet. What is important to note that the IIHF monitors everything all over the world. We have eyes everywhere, I like to say. We work with two partners. We work with a company called Sport Radar that monitors all of our events. It monitors the CHL, it monitors it works with the NHL. It's monitoring ice hockey all over the world. Additionally, we work with the IOC. The IOC has an arm called EBIS, which is kind of like a human component where they work directly with the betting operators to make sure that if there's any unusual betting, it is reported to the sport. This gives you an idea. We are monitoring everything. If alerts come in, then we will deal with each alert on an individual basis. Usually, we will conduct an investigation by having experts review the footage to see if there's anything unusual, and then we will follow it up with discussions with the teams. What the IIHF is doing right now, and we're working very hard, is we believe that we have to monitor, like I said, the world. So we're working to ensure that all of the high-risk leagues are being monitored via their M&As. So we're entering into tri-party agreements between Sport Radar, the member national federations, to ensure that the high-risk leagues in each country are being monitored, and we're actually offering our disciplinary system to assist in case management. So going forward, the focus for next season is that we will increase the tri-party agreements for high-risk leagues. We will increase cooperation and intelligence sharing with the leagues. We will increase education to stakeholders outside of just players. So we want to ensure that we're educating athlete support personnel, general managers, parents, and increase consistency between national and international rules. We're really noticing a problem where the IIHF rules, you cannot bet on ice hockey at all. Whereas then you have some national federation rules where it's saying, okay, well, you can just not bet on your own game. And this inconsistency is making it very difficult for players to understand what they can or cannot do. So we're working very hard right now to ensure that there is consistency so that it's very clear to players, to coaches, and officials what they can or cannot do. So the last topic I will briefly touch on before we introduce the panel is abuse and harassment.
Yeah, it's definitely been maybe the best way to describe it is a roller coaster, from coming out publicly as John Doe to the world, and coming and dealing with the overwhelming support and everyone reaching out, to really trying to focus on myself and begin the healing journey. And I'm very proud of where I am today.
For me, I've known Kyle for the better part of 10 years. We've been teammates, trained together back when we were younger, and once Kyle came forward with this story, it hit me very hard because of how close I've been with him. I've been his teammate, right? I've been on the bus with him, and to see that he had been going through all of that during those times was tough.
I'm not the only one that's been through something like this abuse. And once you break down those walls, it's amazing what people will share with you. And It's amazing to know that I'm not alone. And I think that's one thing, if I was going to leave anything with you guys, it's that you're not alone either. And that there's always somebody there, and somebody that wants to help, and somebody that's willing to help.
It was actually pretty amazing hearing that he was our assistant coach, because last year I was dealing with some of my baggage from playing junior hockey and maybe some traumatic experiences that happened during that time. What really kick-started me in that transformation and growth was hearing Kyle's story, and I thought that was an extremely honorable thing for him to do.
You know, I think the biggest message that I can give to those people is by hiding something, by keeping it a secret, by keeping it inside, whether it's happened to you or whether you've seen it happen, it's only going to lead to bigger and worse problems. You know, whether it's, you know, it might be you this time, but it might be your little brother or your little sister next time. And I think that's the way that we have to look at it, because there was an individual that helped me come forward, an extremely brave individual, and he's the one that gave me the courage to come forward. If I would have come forward sooner, I could have possibly stopped it from happening to him. And at no point should anybody ever have to deal with that. So for me, it's, you know, we got to keep furthering those conversations, keep moving forward, but not forget about the past, not turn our back on the past, because then we'll run into the same mistakes, or the same mistakes but different in the future. We're seeing all the stories come out of how people have been affected in the past. And with those stories, we're able to make a genuine, meaningful change. Without this happening, without these tough conversations on all levels, we wouldn't see the change. And that's also now leading to the education side of it. It's getting together in a group and discussing and sitting down with survivors of all abuses, because there isn't one kind of abuse. You know, anything can be abuse, from verbal to physical to sexual. The list goes on and on. The fact that we're having these conversations really excites me for the future of hockey, for more than hockey, for our society and our world, because without having these tough conversations, we wouldn't have change.
Fat cow, whore, stupid bitch, you are sponsored by Obesita. She's just like that, they said. That's just her way of coaching. The fear would make me compete better. He said I was special. As long as I did exactly as he said, I would make it to the national team. If you don't do it, I will not select you for the upcoming lineup. I was so scared. He said he would jump off a bridge if I ever told somebody. These, unfortunately, are the stories that we are hearing now. These are why we are here, is so that we never hear these stories again. The IIHF is working not only with the IOC, but also other international sports, and we've identified risk factors that help determine the risk level of abuse and harassment in each individual sport. The reality is that 7 of those abuse factors or risk factors exist in ice hockey. The first one, a lack of education, understanding of what constitutes harassment and abuse in sports. What I think is important to note that this goes both ways. What is abuse and what is not abuse? What is harassment and what is not harassment? A player showing up late in 10 push-ups, that's not abuse, that's not harassment. A player showing up late and making a player run until he collapses and he throws up, that's probably abuse. High tolerance for physical violence and injuries. Ice hockey is a tough sport. Players have a high tolerance for any type of physical abuse and violence. Culture of secrecy and scandal avoidance. The hierarchical nature of sport and unequal power relationship. In individual sports, a runner, his time makes the determination if he goes to the Olympics. In ice hockey, a coach, a GM makes the determination if a player goes to the Olympics. A win-at-all-costs mentality. Doesn't matter, as long as we're winning, nothing else is important. A lack of safeguarding policies and procedures. Risk situations inherent to sport. Showers, changing rooms, carpoolings, overnight stays. These are all things that make unfortunately, our sport at a higher risk for abuse and harassment. It's really important to note that we all listen to Kyle's story. Kyle's story is horrific. Kyle was involved in a sexual assault. The biggest issue we face in ice hockey is psychological abuse. It's verbal abuse, which is non-physical tactics to harm, control, manipulate, or intimidate. Yelling, threats, humiliation. And what is important to know is this is not just coaches to players. This is peer-on-peer. Tons of peer-on-peer psychological and verbal violence going on in ice hockey. And the unfortunate reality is, unlike 20 years ago, we live in a world with social media. We live in a world where players are online. You guys see what you see on the ice. You see what you see in the locker room. There's so much going on when those players go home in their room on their phones. It's also important to remember that psychological and verbal abuse is serious. It has long-lasting effects on players and people. It goes way past playing careers. A new player, team member, joins the team. Can you be sanctioned from forcing this person to drink alcohol or run down the street naked? Unfortunately, these are situations that we're facing in ice hockey. We consider these forms of hazing rituals. You can be sanctioned for these. Hazing rituals are a form of induction that involves subjecting a person to different harmful or uncomfortable activities, harmful and most often dangerous practices. It's really important that we understand. Your players decide what is okay for them and where their limits are. And each player is entitled to have different limits. It's our job or your job to help understand what those limits are. One player, you can push him. You can push him really hard, and you know that. Another player, he might not be the same, and that's okay. They get to define their limits, just like you get to define your limits. The other components of abuse and harassment, sexual abuse, verbal, nonverbal, or physical, consent is usually manipulated. Physical abuse, forced activities, racism, discrimination. The IIHF takes racism and discrimination extremely seriously. We had a case where a league gave them maximum sanction. We took the case and we sanctioned him for a year. We take it very seriously. Neglect, failure to provide minimum level of care. This is whether it's a coach or a doctor. Complicity, authorizing, assisting, or covering up any type of psychological, physical, or sexual abuse. Inducing, encouraging, or instructing. Hey, captain, go get him to do that tonight. Teach him a lesson. A violation may occur in person, remotely, or online. So I've told you all of the rules of all of the things that you shouldn't do. I think it's important that we focus not only those things we shouldn't do, but how we should be coaching. And that is coaching with kindness and consent, person-centered approach, coaching with positive and supportive verbal and nonverbal language, actively listening to your players, provide feedback in a constructive and non-harmful manner, focus on the development of social, psychological, cognitive, and sport-specific skills, promote awareness and understanding of safeguarding policies and procedures among players, among your staff, and among volunteers. Do not just focus on winning, but focus on creating a safe and nurturing environment for all of your players. I think it's important that we all also understand how to report. And this is whether or not you guys need to report something, whether or not you want to provide your players a safe place to report something. The IIHF has a completely anonymous reporting mechanism. You can send your players to the IIHF website. You see these posters, they're all over the arena. On the back of your accreditation, if you have accreditation, you have our QR code. There's a million different ways to report. And if a player comes to you, if another coach comes to you and they want to report, provide them the options. Maybe they don't trust the IIHF. Tell them to go report to the IOC. Just make sure your players and your staff and your volunteers feel like they have a safe place to go report. And since I have a little time before the panel, I'm going to touch on briefly some of the initiatives that the IIHF is working on right now. So we have initiated an M&A Integrity Officer program. So in every single country of every federation, there is an integrity officer. And this integrity officer is responsible for these topics in your country. The goal behind this is that we have a single point of contact and that the federations, you as coaches, know exactly who you're supposed to approach in a federation if you have questions or if you have issues. Their job is to help us increase education, and awareness raising. Their job is to liaise with the relevant NATOs or the relevant authorities to make sure that they know the rules so that you guys know the rules. And then they're also there to help us facilitate investigations. We are really focusing on workshops, so we're doing workshops at all of our U18 championships. This year we were able to do it 8 in person, 2 with WADA Adele, 3 with the IIHF Lab, which is an online platform, World Juniors, World Women's. We do it at camps. Historically, we have always focused on players and officials, but moving forward, our goal is to make sure that every single championship at our U18s, that we have a workshop with players, we have a separate workshop with athlete support personnel, which would be coaches and GMs, and then we'll have a separate workshop with on-ice officials. We are actually working on coaching curriculum, which is something that we're doing right now, which will give the education that is necessary to coaches that will be provided during the lifespan of a coach. So they will know, our M&As will know when a coach needs to get educated on what topics related to integrity. Also, we did a very intensive due diligence program this year, so we determined all those persons that were high risk in our championships. So we run 38 championships, and we determined that every single person that was high risk, we determined those who have contact with players are high risk, had to go through a background check. So they had to go through a 2-step background check. They did a background check of open source and whatever is available in that country. Any person that came back high risk had to go through another step, which was a new AI technology that was utilized. We also have every single person that came to our championship on behalf of the IIHF had to go through the respect education, which is a 90-minute education that basically goes over the type of behavior that is acceptable or not acceptable: abuse, harassment, bullying, discrimination. And one last video before we turn it over to the panel.
We have an open door policy, and I know a lot of coaches do have an open door policy, but sometimes there's an asterisk with it. What are the consequences going to be if I tell them about this? Am I going to come out of the lineup? Am I going to get back into the lineup? And I can truly say with our team, with our coaching staff, and whatever's said in those meetings has absolutely nothing to do with decisions that we make.
The biggest part of a coach-player dynamic is building trust. Players need to trust you, that you are in their corner, that you want what's best for them. We're dealing with student athletes that are going through a lot, that are very busy, and we're fairly demanding of them when they come here as well. We're also understanding of everything they're going through.
For coaches to show you their humanness, I think it brings out your humanness as well. If we don't have that proper nourishment, if we don't have people who set an example, it can cause us to make mistakes in the future or not treat people the way that we want to be treated. I think that's something really good that our coaches have shown us so far.
When I see my teammate who's also going through the same thing as me, it can help me connect, and we can think about ways that we can get through this together, and knowing that he's not alone just really puts that kind of personal connection to someone and really makes it feel like more of a friendship.
If a player can't come out with his concerns without fearing getting cut, getting traded, just left behind, there's a problem there. We can't live in a world of fear. If a player doesn't have to worry about what's going to happen to me, then I think we would see a lot more success in taking out these problems before they become problems and making it so it's a safer place, because the longer that we, should I say something, should I not, the longer the abuse goes on.